This is a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining in this evening. Obviously, due to the ongoing healthcare crisis as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic, we are conducting our meeting virtually this evening. First time ever for us in Brighton, and now commonplace pretty much beginning this week with meetings all over the state and probably most of the country. We do invite all community members to participate as they normally would, albeit from a safe social distance. If you're watching this event streamed, please feel free to go to the link on the bcsd.org website to join the meeting via Zoom. As is our regular practice in a moment, we will begin our meeting with an opportunity for public comment. Our regular rules for comment with regard to stating your name and address, the duration of your comments still apply. The decorum that we ask for our public meetings should still be observed here in our virtual meeting. It's a public open meeting of the board to conduct our business in public, and participation by the public takes place during the public participation session on the agenda. And not throughout the meeting. So a little different than the ongoing forums and the additional virtual forums that Dr. McGowan is holding and the board will continue to hold as we go forward. This evening is still a Board of Education meeting. Thank you for your support on this new approach and for understanding our limits as we use the technology new to us in this manner so that it's best to keep everyone safe. So then I guess officially I welcome you to the Brighton Central School District Board of Education Executive Budget Proposal and Budget Hearing for March 24th, 2020. To begin this evening, we do offer the opportunity for public participation. Members of the public who have joined us here online are welcome to, I guess, Dr. McGowan will have folks raise their hand and you will enable them to speak. Is that?
Actually, no. Most people, if not all, who are in the meeting right now are on mute. All you need to do is unmute yourself, and you can go ahead and do that. And that would be for this section of the meeting. And then we would just ask that you go back to mute, only because the microphone tends to pick up all sorts of background noise, and then that kind of lays over the audio of anybody else who's trying to speak. So
okay.
If you'd like to participate in the public session, simply unmute yourself and follow the same procedure you normally would for public comment, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, is just name, address, and then address your comment to the board.
Yeah, actually, yeah, we'll remind again. Give me a sign, raise your hand, and hopefully where I have video of you, we'll do that. If not, we'll ask everybody to please be careful and take a turn weighing in. Not everyone is here on video. Please be brief. We ask everybody to please be brief. You're welcome to make a statement, ask a question. If it's something we can address this evening, we will. If not, we will get back in the future. We also invite any members of the public, anything that you see or hear tonight. Our agenda is posted online. Our materials are posted online. Any materials that we update during the meeting or that get added very, very rapidly along the way, we'll make sure that those are updated also this evening, if you will, so that they are there. You're welcome to email us either directly to Kim Lanzafame or any of the board members with any question, or directly to Dr. McGowan, and you can also phone any of us also. So at this point in time, we'll welcome members of the public who've joined us via Zoom who might want to ask a question or make a comment during public participation. So do I see anybody who is raising their hand? Heather Coyne, yes, please.
Yes, hi there. Thanks for doing this. You can hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. I just had a budget-related question.
Okay.
Okay, and that is, I've been curious about this. I know that back in 2018, in response to Trump's tax changes, New York State passed a law allowing school districts in New York State to allow unrestricted charitable contributions. I was wondering what the board's thoughts and the administration's thoughts have been on setting this up for Brighton, given that the funds can't be earmarked by donors and have to go into general programming and operations. I ask this because I've heard more than one community member ask about donating to safe programs. And I thought this might be a way to do it, at least in some part, and without putting extra burden on those who can't afford it. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, or any of the board members did.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of thoughts on that, but first I'm going to ask Kevin, would you like to weigh in on that one?
Sure. Well, Heather, first of all, I'd say we have not turned down a donation yet. So if anybody would like to approach us, there's 36 some people on this, we would be happy to hear that. And they could certainly talk to us about that. And actually this year, we began kind of broadening our perspective on accepting donations. And a couple of the extracurricular programs at the high school, Ski Club being one of them, were sponsored by a business in town. And House Digital sponsored the Ski Club. So since they put the money up, I should mention their name too. So we're happy to think about that. When we talk about a tax change that allowed for that, and us being able to set up a fund and it would not be earmarked, et cetera, that would be a key for us, that donations not necessarily be earmarked for a particular program, et cetera. Philosophically, what we've struggled with over the years was the fact that if somebody was donating a sum of money for something, they would likely, whether or not it was earmarked for that, expect some sort of influence, deference, participation then in how those funds are spent. Okay. Just from an expectation perspective. For example, if somebody donates money for a coach, even though we say, well, that can't be earmarked, they say, well, okay, that's fine, but that's really what I'm hoping it'll go towards. And then, by the way, a couple months later, well, why isn't my child getting more playing time? Or why is the coach doing it this way? Or why is that, right? So there's that issue, the influence issue. But then there's also just the practical implication of, if a program is something we are proposing as worthwhile and should be a part of the program and should be a part of what we're saying is our K-12 program, both soup to nuts, from the academic side to the extracurricular side, this is what kids in our community should get, then philosophically, that's what we should be including in the budget for the entire community to pay for, and not be dependent on a donor for that. It should be supported by the greater perspective of the tax levy as part of the program. And then the issue becomes, okay, so that works for a short period of time. Maybe that works for 1 year, and that's great for that one group of kids. But in terms of equity, then the following year, it's not supported by that donor, the way that money is being spent. It's not a recurring source of revenue. It's a one-shot revenue for that year. And It creates a gap then that either needs to be filled by another community member, and we become then fundraisers, which we struggle with being fundraisers because, frankly, we already are, in the sense that we're raising a levy and then asking people for additional money beyond that as a school district, as a taxing entity. It is a struggle philosophically. So you add all those things up, and it's not something that we have felt comfortable going out and soliciting donations. But if people would like to approach us to do that, we are not turning them away either.
Okay, I
would add also, Heather, thank you. We, as Dr. McGowan said, every one of our meetings that have a consent agenda, we normally are accepting one or more gifts from members of the public. And they could be donations of cash, they could be donations of items to different programs. We're certainly appreciative of that. And they can be residents, they can be alumni, they can be anyone, really. So there's always that mechanism to gift to the district if someone would choose. Also, the Brighton Education Fund. Through that, where many residents, alumni, and other supporters of Brighton who no longer live here donate through that as a vehicle all the time to help out the district. The one thing I will tell members of the community, specific to what you asked for in terms of legislation, this comes up every once in a while through School Boards Association inquiries. And when we last looked at this, if you'll recall, this legislation was done by New York State in an attempt to undo federal legislation around the limitation on state and local taxes.
Yeah.
The companion piece required to make it work was never fully done by the New York State legislature, is what I had previously been told by School Boards Association. So in other words, it may not be fully set up for an individual to receive any sort of a benefit at the state level. Now, I will look further into that, But so there's an element there. But again, getting back to, if there's a resident or anyone who wishes to make a donation of any type of gift, we'll easily make that happen. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Mark,
Karen, you
can I-
had something?
Yeah, can I just pop in there for a second? That particular law, I pulled it up, I'm looking at it right now. The companion piece to it is that districts and municipalities are encouraged to then offset the donation by offering up to a 95% tax credit. So
Right,
we would
and it's-
receive a donation and then not receive the tax payment. So it wouldn't be a net gain for us. The net gain would be maybe 5% in terms of funds. And while I'm not looking at any sort of net gain in the face, it's not necessarily, it's meant for people to still be able to write off their taxes on their tax return. It's not meant to be a revenue driver for districts.
Exactly.
Right.
And as we inquired, the State School Boards Association was clear back to us. The state legislature needed to fix that to really make it work. But meanwhile, the federal government stepped in and disallowed it at the federal level. The courts did, and anyway. So, okay. We're done with that one for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Others, members of the public who are here either visually or on audio who wish to ask a question tonight? All right, I see no one raising their hand. Is there anyone who's not on a video that wishes to unmute their microphone and ask a question or make a statement? Okay, then. Thanks, folks, for joining in. We're going to continue to move forward. If there's something you see or hear tonight, again, please send us an email, text, call, and either Dr. McGowan or any members of the board, we're happy to follow up further with additional information. So at this point, I'll ask members of the Board of Education for approval of our agenda for this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Julene and seconded by Larry. Kim, would you call the roll? Kim,
You're still muted.
Andrea, Cassandra, how do you vote?
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
Julene,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Mark,
aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Marvin,
Marv, you need to unmute and vote, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
thank you.
Not bad for the first time around, everybody. Good job.
Yeah.
Now a motion, please, for approval of the minutes from our March 10th, 2020 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Karen and seconded by Julene. First, I'll ask if there are any additions, corrections, or deletions to those minutes that have not been previously reported.
I think that was Andrea who seconded it,
Oh, I'm sorry. Second
That's
by
okay.
you.
right? Am I right?
All right, go ahead, Kim. Call the roll, please.
Andrea,
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
Julene,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye. Oh, Mark.
Christina,
Aye.
Marv,
Yes.
thank you.
All right, next up on our agenda this evening, item number 5 is a presentation by Dr. McGowan of the executive budget proposal, the latest version for the 2020-2021 school year. Dr. McGowan.
If everybody could mute their mics, that would be great.
I can take care of that. Hold on one second, Kim. Okay. Thanks very much. And let me just walk you through this presentation. Very little has changed since the last presentation given to the board. 2 weeks ago. While everything in the world seems to have changed, this proposal itself hasn't necessarily. Although we do want to point out a couple of areas that we'll need to address along the way and keep thinking about as we move through this process. So this is the proposal as it stands right now. We will ask you on the 14th to adopt a budget, and I do expect that we will have to make changes between now and then. State budget has not been agreed to, and we'll address that as we walk through this, but certainly there are pretty seismic shifts in terms of the economic landscape and the state budget landscape that we will have to address as well. Okay, so our key budget guidelines that you adopted back at the beginning of this process, of course, revolve around the idea of having sustaining revenue to make sure we can appropriately fund our work going forward and in next year's budget. We also, of course, in these guidelines ask that the budget support the blueprint plans as they're developed throughout the summer and implemented into the year, particularly in our priority areas around systems, safety, security, capital planning, budget development, mental health and wellness, academic rigor for all students, diversity, and equity. We also stated in the guidelines that we'd want to make sure that we're evaluating the resource requirements to make sure that all students have the opportunity to graduate with the right skills to move on to college or career, particularly individualized to their talents and what they would like to do going forward. And in thinking about the economic climate and changing needs, we want to make sure we prioritized resources and evaluated opportunities for reductions and consolidations as well. And we, in this budget process, wanted to make sure as a guideline that we were prudently planning for the implementation of full-day kindergarten and the debt service impact of the 2017 approved by voters project, and that we comply with the New York State property tax cap and understand its impact on us long-term as well. The budget development calendar through the process. Of course, you're very familiar with this. We're all the way down now to the budget proposal on the 24th, but we've had community budget forums. We've provided you updates, and you've been meeting pretty regularly, of course, covering budget topics as we've reacted to what the state has provided to us in terms of their projections in the governor's proposal, and in terms of what our spending plans are and our needs are here in the district. The budget factors that we've assessed, essentially on the left-hand side, the budget factors that we know are increased staffing demands due to emerging needs, demands for additional special education services, labor increases relative to the increase in minimum wage, demand for specialized transportation as well, pension contribution increases, health insurance rates going up, and that multi-year impact of planning for full-day kindergarten along with the capital project, and the allowable tax levy growth at 1.81%. And so we have, going into that now, we also know some consideration for the debt in that, but that's what the factors were that we were assessing along the way. So the factors to continue to assess are the changes in mandated student programs, the student elective demands as we schedule at the high school level, changes in state and federal aids, and this big one here in red, impact of coronavirus. And this is something for people to continue to think about and for you as a board to consider over the next several weeks. We are just now beginning to understand what the economic implications could be. They could be long-lasting, several years long-lasting, and we need to consider what impact that plays both in this year's budget and budgets moving forward as well. Any new unfunded mandates, there could be unfunded mandates as a result of this particular situation. We're hearing about them on a daily basis, frankly, the possibilities. Volatility in federal politics and funding reliability, what happens in the election in November will impact our work here as well, relative to funding for public education through title monies. And then financing strategies for the capital project, and really the tolerance in this community for tax increase relative to the tax levy limit or the tax cap is a consideration as well. We did collect community feedback along the way when we did thought exchange. We had 469 participants. They shared nearly 200 thoughts, 199 thoughts, and we held community forums on the 25th of February and the 3rd of March as well to really triangulate that data and get a better sense for what exactly that was telling us. We've done Facebook Live events and in-person events, of course, the most recent being Thursday when we held the forum virtually. And discussions were held to gather information. We asked participants to really clarify that exchange data. And the takeaways from that were that we wanted to keep cuts as far away from students as much as possible. Wanted to keep programming the way it is, and that reducing would be better than eliminating. This is really what we took from those conversations and from the data presented. We also took from that we should not present a budget over the cap, and that the community values all of its programming beyond the mandates. We heard over and over again, keep Brighton, and keep advocating, which we have continued to do, spending a considerable amount of time in Albany, and from here, from Brighton, advocating, supporting the work of Fight for Brighton, collaborating with anybody who will listen to us, not just our legislators, but legislators who could have an influence over that process and are sympathetic to our situation and who experience some similar situations in the districts that are within their legislative boundaries as well. So what process are we looking to use to close the preliminary gap? Well, the preliminary gap you see down on the right-hand side was $2.4 million. And I'll go through with you the difference between revenue and expenses where we got to that $2.4 million. But what we're looking at in this proposal to you is a series of service level reductions amounting to $650,000. So it's important to point out, of the $2.5 million, we're only asking to reduce service in the community right now by $650,000. And those are an important $650,000. They represent real people, real positions, very important programs to us, but they're a modification of the current offerings. We don't take that lightly. We don't want to do that. It's important to point that out, that we'd prefer to continue to operate those programs the way we have. We simply can't afford to at this point, which is why we're proposing what we are. We're also looking at cost deferrals, financing strategies to make up another $825,000. That will have an impact later on. We will have to make up for that expense on the revenue side later on, either through additional taxes or additional cuts to reduce our expense in future budgets. We're also looking to, we have updated our projections and reconciling our expenses this year. So based on updated numbers for health insurance and what we can anticipate going forward, and then efficiencies received also in the process of $175,000, just where we've looked at additional places that we could count on savings in the budget also. The cost reduction strategies, the $650,000 that I mentioned to you, that is a result of these specific program and position cuts. The first is we are cutting the Assistant Director of Humanities position and restructuring administrative positions related to academic intervention services, special education, and mental health. That's a 1.0 reduction in the administrative area. We are reducing class selectives and making adjustments in class size to reduce some staffing at the high school level by 2 positions. At the middle school level, we're suggesting and proposing cutting 5.6 positions for savings of $300,000, but it will modify the team teaching structure. Also reduce foreign language to a half-year program. It's in 6th grade. It's currently a full-year program. And we will be looking at enrollment adjustments as well in class size at the middle school. Again, reduction of 5.6 positions. At French Road, we're going to restructure the delivery of 4th grade instrumental music. That will be half the program it is right now. We will still be able to service all children, just scheduling that differently. Will not be scheduled as a special, but rather just pull out instrument lessons, but we would make that available to all students. And restructuring our instructional coaching positions by another position. That's embedded professional development at the K through 8 level that will be reduced also in this proposal. Budgets are a statement. They are a statement about what we value. They communicate a message and where our priorities are. It says a lot about where we are emphasizing our work when we put out a budget as a value statement. This particular executive budget proposal does meet and exceed our state mandates to support every child along the spectrum. So we have not reduced services beyond the mandate, something we talk often about, that we go above and beyond. It does preserve our core educational programs, those valued by the community. There are modifications, but it does preserve our programs. And we believe it respects taxpayers and honors our commitments, specifically not proposing a budget to go over the tax cap, respecting the perspective that we've received from taxpayers, both through this process, but frankly in last year's vote as well in the proposal to go over the cap. What do the expenses look like going into next year, and how do they break down? Salaries will go down slightly, 0.7%. That's based on the number of people, again, that's not a reduction in their salaries. That's based on the number of people being accounted for in terms of salaries. So that's a reduction of $241,000. The benefits line will go up only 3.5%. I know I mentioned to you an 8.5% increase to the health insurance benefit, but again, by a reduced number of people being budgeted for in that category, the total spending in that area will go up 3.5%. BOCE spending based on student needs, student programming in particular, will go up $857,000. And supplies and services will go up $705,000. Debt service will go up $1.6 million. That is the payments becoming due now on the 2017 voter-approved project. We have to make that lift. We've talked about that quite a bit for several years. We'll talk about how that is a portion of the debt service lifting into this year's, but that we'll continue to have to build into that going forward as well. So where does that break down revenue versus expenses? The estimated revenue coming in next year would be a 4.62% increase overall, 3.8% increase in the revenue coming from the levy, 3.83% specifically in the property tax cap area. And then the payments in lieu of taxes will go up $15,000. It's a small dollar amount, looks like a big percentage, but those pilot agreements go up $15,000 next year, or 6.8%. For a total increase in that area, the tax collected as pilots and the tax cap capped levy at 3.84%. Financing sources in total, the use of reserves and appropriated fund balance will go up 26%. We're talking about $900,000 we're using out of reserves, $905,000. That is an increase over what we previously have used. And that's basically us saying to you right now, those are rainy day funds and it's pouring. And so that's what we need to be using that for. And we'll continue to explore our use of reserves. Remember the long-term implication of that as well. Also, our investment income will go up slightly, and sales tax will go up slightly as well. Those are smaller dollar amounts and bigger percentages. And the state and federal aid, we expect to go up right now $648,000. Largely that's entirely state aid, or 3.64%. And again, because there's not an agreed upon state budget, and we're unsure of that number, that's the governor's proposal. I would have told you 2 weeks ago that that would go up based on the legislatively agreed upon budget and agreed upon with the governor. We don't know the status of that at this point, so we'll certainly keep you posted. And that's why there may be a variance between now and the April 14th adoption of the budget. Our estimated expenses, though, on the right-hand side, we don't expect that to change significantly between now and then, unless we're coming back to you saying we need to reduce expenses further because the revenue will be less. Right now, we're looking again at benefits going up 3.37% total. BOCE spending up about 10%, that $857,000 I mentioned to you, based on student need. Supplies contracts, and the big one again, $1.6 million, or 37% increase in that debt service that's coming online at this point. The resulting tax rate, and we'll emphasize this at the end again, is $26.09 per $1,000 of assessed value. And the average home being assessed at $220,000, that would be a $198 increase. It's important to point out again, what we are doing, and we used to call this points of pride, this particular slide, but I want to point out why we've changed essentially our language around that. Although we are proud that we are able to maintain programs with modifications and glad to be able to present that, feel like that's the right answer for kids, it's very difficult to talk about pride in a moment where that also impacts people's positions and the program that we would rather have as a full program, not a modified program. So yes, we're glad we could find a way to make this work for another year, but in a modified fashion. But it's just important to say too, it is not necessarily by choice, it's by necessity. So what does that mean? We are modifying the instructional leadership and professional development program. I mentioned that those two reductions to you. The coaching supports as well, that's that embedded staff development we mentioned. The music program in 4th grade, the 6th grade foreign language, class size course offerings, and again, that team teaching structure at the middle level. And on the right-hand side, these are the areas that we're able to maintain that are important to us, that we've heard over and over again, our community values so much. So AIS services and supports, these are beyond the mandates. Summer school offerings, all of the opportunities we have for kids in terms of extracurriculars, athletics, co-curricular activities, and the transportation services that are important to so many people in our community. And that is for everybody in our community. And we recognize that we're providing service for our public and non-public students. We also recognize this has been a conversation that we've had, and want to continue to endorse that as a service necessary for so many people in our community whose days off don't always align with all of ours, but that is the service that many people in our community, and the only service that they receive for the taxes that they're paying towards this program also. Relatively small dollar amount, but important for people to know, our non-public families, that we are offering that service for them, and we will continue to do that in this proposal at the level that we have in the past, recognizing that that's a financial burden for people, a practical burden, and a loss of instructional time if those students are not able to attend on those days, even though Brighton might not be in session ourselves. So I do want to point out again, the building up our levy for capital outlays, we've used this slide in the past and updated it at this point to make sure we're pointing out to you again the 2017 Facilities Improvement Plan, and the expectation at that point that there would be an average annual tax impact of $144. That was presented again in 2017. But when the override was defeated in 1920, instead of that one lift into the tax number, we've had to break that up now over several years. You can see in the bar chart here on the left-hand side of the slide that we are looking at that $188 total increase, the blue bar. That's how much we're allowed to increase that tax at the cap number. And that breaks down to $143 for operations for the ongoing program that we're offering, and $55 of that is going towards the levy. And again, we'll have to continue to build towards that total of $144 of annual impact. We can't put that all in at once. That was the attempt last year in the levy, but we can't do that because we are capped in how much we can collect going forward. So I just want to point that out, that we'll continue to have to recognize that moving forward. And this slide shows that. We'll have to use some short-term financing until our building aid begins. And the debt service, you can see over time, we are building, and it will go up again in the 21-22 budget, and then pretty much level off at that point for the foreseeable future. But we have to spend that debt service in order to generate the aid in the following year. So as you can see, the orange bar on the chart is then the building aid that is generated by the debt service being paid. So we will increase that significantly in the 21-22 budget. Still not there matching that expense yet, or coming closer to matching that expense. So we're asking then to use fund balance to bridge that gap going into next year. And you can see the net levy impact of that. We will level off then in the 21-22 budget, which will be a welcome time for sure. So what do the objects in particular look like, and what are the summaries we would make about those? We've pointed out several of these expenses in the earlier slides. We do keep these in the presentation because these are all posted on the website, and we want people to be able to take a look at each of these items and ask us questions, of course, if they do come up, and we want to keep these available to people. The bottom number, that 1.6 million, again, is that debt service. Important to point out. Transportation services going up 12% is a combination of the additional cost for specialized transportation for specific programs for students, and the truing up of our contract expense going into next year. In our budget right now, we are in a deficit in that area. We're spent more. We need to budget more for that just because of the expense going up. So that's a true expense right there. And then if we look again at the BOCES programs and support, that's specific to student needs, going up $857,000. Some of the factors that increase the spending, and I know I've mentioned some of these, we are reducing that expense in the administrative area by cutting that position. The teaching area is up 4.4%. Non-certified area will go down 18%. Reducing one administrative position, that staff teaching the impact, the elementary music, 6th grade foreign language, team teaching, et cetera, each of those reductions we mentioned, those modifications. It also, though, adjusts for enrollment increases at kindergarten and, sorry, let me go back, and for ENL and special education. And then we're adjusting for minimum wage and contractual increases, as well as we continue to work on implementing a higher minimum wage here in New York State. And we will reduce our planning for funding for full day K in 21-22 as well. We had hoped to be able to budget more and build towards that. We can't continue to do that right now given the current budget circumstance. So it does reduce that funding as well. So with those positions, where will we land? Next year, we will be looking at 6 positions in particular in kindergarten, so that our enrollment is at 15.5, but we'll be relatively stable going into next year, of course, as well. The spending factors we'd like to continue to point out to you: the health insurance, overall spending in that specific area, in the benefit area, goes up 6.4%. All together in that line, we're up 3.5%. The medical inflation trend for us is 8.5%, and it carries over our risk position provision, continues that and builds on that into 19-20. We need to build that back up. We had to go into the risk provision this year. And our pension rates will go up 10.25% as well, plus any growth in base wages increases our spending in that area. Payroll taxes will go up commensurate with the change in our personnel costs, less adjustment for the current budget variance. And then we have an improved loss factor for workman's compensation risk ratios, which helps us reduce that slightly in particular. Other spending areas and factors we want to mention to you, business technology services reflect a $70,000 investment in cybersecurity to comply with Ed Law 2D and the SHIELD Act. Those are required for us to invest in that data security for our students and staff in this community. It also funds our technology department supplies and contracts. Previously, we took out of the tech reserve. We have to move that now into general fund. And as that reserve draws down, the operational costs must go into the general fund. So we've got to be making that transition. And special education reflects the current enrollment services. It also replenishes our risk reserve based on emerging trends. And the transportation cost, again, reflects that current program mandate, inflation adjustment, as well as driver wages to increase with recruitment challenges. So we need to continue to support that contract because, again, we're very shallow on drivers for sure and having enough people. This is more detail, again, that we include in the presentation for people to take a look at. The business function, there's a $10,000 change in our cost for audits. That goes up 8.6%. And then if we go down through these other lines, we have to go back. We deferred some equipment spending last year. We have to build that back in. That's a 39% increase, but it's $144,000. And last year we cut several of those out. And the promise was that we'd have to go back to that line for equipment replenishment. Again, all of this data is available and has been reviewed in previous slides, but this is more detail for people to take a look at. So the projected revenue, where then is the money going to come from? We always point out to people, again, that property taxes make up 66% of the total spending, state federal aid, just 21%. Our community is paying the bulk of the cost here at school. And that's important to realize because the state should be picking up far more than they currently are. The source of new funds going into next year essentially will be the tax levy in orange right there, tax levy also in capital, and then funding from the capital area and foundation aid also going up just slightly going into next year. The tax cap calculation, as we mentioned to you, it is not a 2% property tax cap in New York State. For us, it's 3.83%. It's different for every district, and it's different for every year. It's based on a variety of factors. 2% or less is just one number used in that calculation. It's a misnomer that it's called the 2% property tax cap. Our cap this year actually would have been 1.95%, but we're allowed to exclude 47% of the money required to be levied towards that $1.6 million increase in capital expense. So let me repeat that. If we had to use $1.6 million of what would be available if we levied just the cap number, it would eat up such a significant part of our allowable levy that we have to have some of that excluded. And by law, the state allows you to do that. And their calculation is 47% of that could be excluded from the cap and the levy. That's $731,000. The result of which is a cap number of well, it should be 3.83, which we've reported before. So apologize. Again, that's 3.83 is the total amount because this also includes an exclusion for the additional expense for BOCES capital that's included as well. So let me just point that out again verbally and for the recording. And we'll update this slide before it's put up for the community. That's 3.83%. The foundation aid area is important to again consider. There's a gap in total amount that is being paid relative to what we are owed. So if you take a look at the total orange and blue, we are anticipated next year to receive a gap of $8 million, ballpark $8 million, when we should be receiving over $16 million. An $8 million gap. Where does that number come from? The total amount due to the district is based on real kids in real time, enrollment, level of poverty, property wealth in the district, English language learners, special needs students, free and reduced lunch count, etc. A variety of factors go into determining that number. And that number tells us, it's the state's number, that we should receive over $16 million, but we will only receive $8 million. And the reason for that is in the distribution. When the state looks at the number that's due for every district and then decides how to distribute the money they actually have available, they make a political calculation called the shares concept. It's nowhere in the law. It's just an agreed upon concept in the negotiation of the budget at the end of the day to make sure that every area in the state gets their fair share. regardless of what the actual foundation aid number tells you you should get, it is divided that way. And that results in a essentially misguided effort to balance that. Many of our neighbors receiving more because their number due, their total number due, has not gone up as fast as ours. Ours has gone up faster based on our particular demographics than many of our neighbors, our total amount due, thus throwing off the percentage while everybody has stayed relatively flat over the years. In fact, over this period of time, our increase has only been funded, the increase itself has only been funded by less than 50% of what it should have been over time. So we have that $8 million gap. That translates, by the way, into a 16% difference in your property taxes, that particular gap. So how does that compare to other districts around the state? Our peer group, based on the state's calculations, receive 81% of their aid due. We're just receiving 51.8%. So our point around advocacy has been this issue of it's just simply not fair. Get everybody to a similar place relative to that reduction. We realize the state can't afford the full amount for everyone, but there should be a fairness in how much we are reduced. And as I mentioned before, that increase over time over the last 10 years has gone up 39%, and it's only been funded at 57% of the increase that should have gone up over the last 10 years. So the budget summary and the impact on the tax levy, again, the increase in the real property tax levy is 3.83%. And we would tell you that that is not over the cap. It is not over the cap going into next year, and that's the total amount. We will be looking to raise the amount used in the fund balance by 26% going into next year. Again, the rainy day funds. And the unrestricted foundation aid at this point, we believe, will go up $347,000 or 4.2%. What is the impact then on tax rates? As we mentioned before, a home valued at $220,000 will be $198. That assumes a 0.25% appreciation in the tax base, but the rate is not final until the tax warrant is approved in July. And that's Town of Brighton, $198, and Town of Pittsford, $198 as well, two different taxing entities. We're also proposing to withdraw from the Capital Reserve Fund of $2 million. The current balance is $7.9 million, and that would be authorizing us to withdraw $2 million from the existing 2015 Capital Reserve Fund for the purpose of paying additional costs associated with the district's capital improvement project approved by qualified voters of the district in 2017. And essentially this is, we have a capital reserve, and where expenses are higher than what they would have been in 2017, we're not going out for reauthorization from the community and asking for additional tax to pay for that. We're saying we would like our reserves to cover any of the overages. And at this point, we're asking to withdraw $2 million. The community put this money aside for these purposes, and now we have to go back and ask for permission to be able to do that, and asking voters to approve that in this process, or certainly to vote on that, of course. The balance of the Technology Reserve Fund is just over $1 million, and we'd like to withdraw $300,000, and that is to continue the one-to-one program at the secondary level, the 8th grade tablet program, and that's for staff laptop replacements, and also other AV hardware replacements. There's probably no better time than to be talking to you about withdrawing for technology purposes, is the time when people are using this technology right now to learn on their couch, at their desk, in their kitchen, and all over the place other than in classroom. So by way of summary, the spending proposal is $84.24 million. That's an increase of 4.6%. 2.6% of that is operations. 2% is on capital, and reflects our continued investment in our priority areas: safety, security, wellness, rigorous coursework for all students, creativity, innovation, instructional technology, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And response to our mandated increases in spending, invest in programs that we think are so very important, while responsibly trimming, remember, modifying programs so we reduce our impact on students, and honors both the tax impact of the 2017 improvement project and respects where people wanted to be relative to the cap this year. It reflects what we value, which is maintaining as much of our program as we possibly can. The next steps for us are to assess the impact of the final state budget when it is finally adopted, ask you to adopt a budget.
Right, Kevin, this slide was updated. These are last year's dates, so that we just need to correct it. So the budget vote would be on May 19th on budget hearing. So I apologize for that.
No, that's right. So the actual budget adoption will be on the 14th, and the budget, I'll just give everybody a date right now. The budget hearing is on May 12th, and the 19th is the budget vote. So we'll update that slide as well for posting to the website. All right, I will stop sharing there and ask if there are any questions from the board or any additional detail for board members that they would like to discuss.
Board members, does anyone have anything further, question or comment for Dr. McGowan?
Yeah, Mark, this is Larry. I know this is unknowable, Kevin. I would just make the comment in watching the governor's statements yesterday. He said out loud, we're spending money we don't have right now. And that doesn't bode well for us. I know we can't know what the impact of that is at this time, but that's a genuine concern to me in terms of what we're trying to do, not just next school year, but the next few school years.
Yeah, I would just respond to that, Larry. You're absolutely right. It's something we're really worried about, which is why we definitely, want to make sure we're raising the notion that we may need to come to you a couple of weeks from now with a different perspective on this than we have tonight. It's too early to know that right now. Although the governor is not wrong at all in what he's saying, and that's a concern we share. And there's a lot of conversation about all different issues related to this. I mentioned to the board earlier that this is a fascinating, not wanted, but fascinating exercise in understanding how the wheels connect to each other and how this all functions. For example, there's a request across the state to collect property taxes at a different time frame for this year. That would affect our cash flow. There is concern about the state's ability, if not collecting income tax revenue until July, to make their payments to us in April, May, and June. And the remaining state aid payments, just cash flow issues. There are so many questions right now that are up in the air in terms of a 7-10 day almost apocalyptic change to our economy. So we're really preparing for what adjustments might be made, whether that's a budget extender, whether that's mid-year cuts, whether that's the gap elimination adjustment. I think there's a lot of different concerns going forward, certainly, that we're trying to monitor and prepare to make adjustments for.
Yep. And, Kevin, if I could add too, I think, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the update. A reminder to the public, we'll make the corrections that we noted, and we'll continue to update information on the website as it becomes available. But it's quite clear that from our conversations, we still continue to try to have our conversations with those in Albany that we've made relationships with over the last couple of years. It's just that, as everyone can fully understand, there's just no room for this conversation right now in Albany with anybody. First of all, they're not in Albany, no one. And how it's going to shake out, it's pure speculation, other than there's not a lot of positivity around it in terms of dollars. Until we get that budget from the state, which we should have, a week from now or ish, depending on what they decide to do, then we'll have a number in terms of what to expect. And we'll also have some guidance from them on what to expect for year 2, year 3, possibly, in terms of, all the different types of thinking around extensions and budgets, the dreaded gap elimination type approach, again, if that comes around, mid-year cuts, which could be a conversation. So we are just going to have to be ready. We're going to have to be nimble. We're not scheduled to meet formally again until April 14th, which is supposed to be an adoption. We may well have to meet formally and, in sort of a Zoom workshop prior to that, once we have numbers, and we have to look in, reevaluate, and, move forward from there. So that's kind of the best we can tell folks right now. I think it's difficult because everybody's no matter where you are in your life, everybody's situation's up in the air in every aspect of life. And we still have to work on this budget and get it moved forward for us to the extent that we can. So. Okay. All right, thank you, Kevin. We appreciate that, and thank you for the update. Next up, we'll have an update from Lou Alimo on the Brighton Facilities Improvement Plan and where things currently stand, I guess, on that, Lou?
Yes, good evening. So I'm going to share my screen too with a presentation prepared by Campus Construction, just go through some of the upcoming activities. It'll be a quick update just to give the board and the community an idea of what's happening in construction. We are at this point, I'm sorry, full go in construction. We're taking advantage of the schools not being there. We're following all COVID-19 protocols. Our contractors are anyway. We are allowing them access to our buildings though. What work is ongoing, and they're making good progress just in these last 5 days that we've been out of school. So I'm going to share my screen right now and show you if I can figure it out. So excuse me while I'm new to this too. Okay. So just some upcoming activities in the 12 Corners Middle School. First, we have the cafeteria floor replacement. This is a result of us actually rejecting the first floor that went in. It appears the contractor did not have a clean surface when they laid the tile, so we rejected it and fear that it'll crack over the long term. And we're working with the contractor now to be able to reschedule that. It'll take about 10 business days to do that. If we get notice that we may be out from school longer, then we might take advantage of the opportunity. Otherwise, that'll be replaced this summer. Library renovations, we are scheduled to start that June 1st and take over the library space. The librarian, Mrs. Lambert, have been very cooperative, her and the entire team at the middle school, in accommodating this so we could be open and ready for business in September. So that will be upcoming in the next couple of months. Art renovations are planned for this summer. So we'll have some reconstruction of our art rooms and updates and renovations. Bathrooms will be ongoing. We're renovating 54 bathrooms across the district, improving ADA accessibility and just modernizing our facilities. That'll start in the middle school with asbestos being first, and then renovations of the non-asbestos work. One of the other areas is the handrails and stair towers 4 and 5. And we're going to do that at our first opportunity. One of the consequences of the virus is we are fearful about supplies and materials coming in. We expect that as companies may have shut down, that we're going to have delays in that. So that's something that we're watching very carefully and see how that's going to impact our schedules. At the high school, as everyone knows, we are still working on the auditorium renovations. We're working with Graco now as the contractor, subcontractor with the walls and the ceiling work, as well as duct work. There is a lot of work there, and there's been significant change orders that has been presented to the Board of Education with the asbestos that was discovered. As you recall, our ADHERE reports back from the 60s and 70s were just wrong. And so we had a lot more asbestos there that we needed to take care of. We're taking this opportunity to do that and do it the right way. So it's complete. As a consequence, the schedule has been pushed out. We were supposed to be in there in November. We're not going to be back until the start of school with all the work that needs to go in there. So that's ongoing, and we have a large crew in there working. The transformer replacement. This is an important item that will impact the entire community. So we're at RG&E's mercy for the transformer replacement. They required, based on the work that was happening, that we replace the transformer. They have to engineer that and approve that, and they give us the date when they will be on site. So we are completely at their mercy. Right now, we are shooting for the end of June. We are always targeting for the last, soon as school gets out, to be able to install that transformer, and that would be a complete shutdown that would impact neighborhoods. So RG&E, and we'll work with our partners at the town to communicate that and to understand how far-reaching that shutdown will be. The science room renovations, we have started that. Now we have our contractors in there that have started the demolition. We will start asbestos, and that will be ongoing over the next several months. The rooftop air handling units, we are installing steel in the gymnasiums, and the units will be installed this summer. Toilet room renovations are ongoing, as well as other classroom renovations. At French Road, we have begun the demolition of the art music suite. So thank you to Dr. Rio and her team of art music teachers at French Road for packing up and allowing us to get a head start on that. That's going to be a significant reconfiguration of that space. And so that is started and ongoing. We'll have toilet room renovations, rooms 208 and 209. The contractors are starting the floor cutting and the drainage, which are key items that if they can complete those before school is back in session, that would be a great start. Classroom lighting retrofits, that's almost complete. So significant lighting upgrades throughout the building with LED units. The rooftop air handling units is the cooling tower, and that's going to be replaced this summer. The wall pack lighting replacements, that's the exterior all around the building. Those are underway, and the emergency circuit lighting is 80% complete. We allowed the contractor to start in February, and they've been working as program's been ongoing, staying out of everyone's way. So we've got a significant head start on that, and that progress we're pleased with that progress. So then to Council Rock. So we have the major activity at Council Rock is the South Addition. So they're working on the courtyard and the sidewalks. They will be, that's finally complete, the courtyard drainage in the courtyard. So they will start to install the features with the sidewalks. So we should have a useful instructional space starting in the 2021 school year. So that's exciting. We're completing the roof and finishes of the South Addition. And again, we plan to occupy the South Addition. That's going to be our swing space as we continue with the mechanical work on the interior of the building. So the North Addition, we're working on finishes and painting, cafeteria equipment and kitchen equipment, and the stage area is all being constructed. We will not have that back though until November of 2020. So even though they're making significant progress, and anyone that goes through the neighborhood sees that it's looking good, there's still a lot of work to do on the inside, and the cafeteria has to be reconfigured and outfitted. In the interior, a lot of mechanical work. As you recall, we're essentially putting all the mechanicals, we're moving the mechanicals from underneath the building to above the ceilings. So that has presented some challenges. The board has seen some change orders as a result of that. That's a lot of mechanical equipment with the addition of AC to put above the ceilings without changing the roof line of the current structure. So that's been a design challenge. We have invested in the BIM model, and the contractors are using that for clash detection. So they're figuring out all the changes before they get in the field, which is helping us stay on schedule. So that's been a worthwhile investment in the planning stages. So finally, the budget slide, and I'll try to increase the size of this if I can a little bit. So this is the standard summary that we present to the Board of Education. This is also included in the construction manager reports that the board accepts. It provides the original contract value, the change orders to date, and the allowances. And then at the bottom is the most important part, where we look at our contingency. And that's a big part of the reason why we're asking the voters to allow us to withdraw from the capital reserve fund to be able to replenish that remaining project contingency of $324,000. There's still a lot of work to do. There's still potential for unforeseen conditions, and we will need to replenish that. In addition, tomorrow we are opening a bid for the tile project at Council Rock. Again, that was more unforeseen asbestos that we found in the interior. We encapsulated that for this school year, and we're taking the opportunity to retile the interior corridors. Our budget for that piece of it is about $780,000, and we'll see what the bids come through tomorrow, and we'll see what the environment right now is doing to the market. That'll be an obvious test of where we are and how hungry contractors are for work. So keep that in mind. We do have a SAMS grant that was secured by Jamie Romeo, and we're hoping once that comes through, which could be years from now, that we'll be able to replenish the capital reserve with that. Budget is tight, so it's we will need to replenish some of that contingency to make sure that we can honor the scope that was presented to the voters. So with that, I'll unshare my screen and entertain any questions that the board may have.
Lou, have we, you mentioned in your presentation a couple of additions or abilities to operate given the fact that our buildings aren't occupied. Have we altered at all the bid schedule or the planning schedule that normally where we were working for summer work in the fall?
We're trying to push up as much as we can, again, not knowing when we're going to resume school, so we can't
Right.
we can't be too aggressive in that, but there's opportunity to get in there and do some demo and make sure that it's safer when students return. We're taking every opportunity for that, if I'm understanding the question correctly.
Yeah, no, that's what I wondered. I mean, we don't know for certain definitively when school will end yet, how long it'll go. I mean, any of those options. But I assumed from what we had last talked that the bidding process and the time frame to do that is what it is. And if we can take advantage of current subcontractors and other projects underway where we can add additional work, we're going ahead to do that where we can.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, great. All right, thank you very much.
Thank
Board
you.
members, anything further for Lou? And again, thank you for your continued oversight, certainly for our partners at Campus Construction and their management, and Larry Davis for your work on the owners, architect, and engineers committee meetings, which are many and long. So thank you very much for your attention to that. It's very
Hey, Mark, I would call attention to one thing. Lou talked about a couple areas where our records weren't clean, and we found in a couple of his examples asbestos where we didn't think there was one. I do want to note that in the interest of learning and getting better as you go through, that team under Lou is doing a great job of documenting and putting all those records online, the buildings records, so that if there, I shudder to think about this, if there ever needs to be another project soon again, we have much better records, which means we're going to have many fewer surprises. And that's like some of the behind the scenes stuff that I think Lou and those buildings teams are doing that's going to help us a lot in the future. It's painful now, but we'll be that much better in the future. I think it's important to note that.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, it's a very important point. Thank you so much. All right, then next up, may we have a motion, please, board, for approval of the notice of our annual meeting, budget vote, and election.
So moved.
Go ahead. Larry takes it. I'll second.
Moved by Larry and seconded by Karen. I make note, and again, for members of the public that are with us this evening, we have legal requirements and timing requirements in terms of approvals of the date for the budget vote, the date for the board election, the process procedures. As of now, nothing has changed. So in other words, as we sit here this evening, as far as New York State and the State Education Department is concerned, we are scheduling to hold a vote on our budget and a vote on our Board of Education candidates on May 19th, 2020, utilizing the high school as previously planned. Now, obviously, this can change. We expect some things will change. We do expect some guidance from New York State and State Ed that could happen yet this week or very early next week with regard to all of this. And we would certainly communicate that immediately to the public. But for right now, in this meeting this evening, we're asking the board to take action to approve the schedule as previously outlined, and we will alter and adjust as we are directed to. We have no ability on this, by the way, for those that have asked. It's not our choice. We can't unilaterally change direction in terms of dates, absentee voting, suspension of rules. That's entirely from New York State. And this is affecting all elections, primary elections, the fall elections, and certainly our school district elections scheduled for May. So, Kim, would you call the roll, I guess, of the board on that, please?
Yes. Andrea,
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Marv. Marv,
I saw his lips move.
Yes. Aye.
thank
There
you,
you go.
Marv.
Thank you. All right, next item of business this evening, we have two policies that are back for second read and approval. We've dealt with both of these previously as first reads. May I have a motion, please, to approve second read on policy 8260, instruction under Title I and parent and family engagement?
So moved. It's Julie.
Moved by Julene and seconded by Christina. The board will recall from previous discussions and previous notes that this policy was updated. It's a 6-page policy that was updated to affect all current changes made in the ESSA, Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and update those as needed in our current policy around parent and family engagement under Title I programs. I don't have any additional changes or corrections or updates from anyone. Does any board member have anything to add or ask further?
No.
And Kim, call the roll, please.
Andrea,
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Marv,
Yes.
Okay, we're on a roll. A motion, please, to approve second read on policy 7530 under our students section having to do with child abuse and maltreatment.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Karen and seconded by Larry. Again, this is similar situation, although entirely different policy. Second read, this reflects a number of changes that have been made both in education law in New York State and also family court and a couple of other New York code with regard to child abuse, who is a reporter, reporting information to clarify and also clarify the role of individuals like the Board of Education members. So, and again, I don't have anything further to add or change or delete with with what we've previously had as a first read. So does any other board member have anything this evening?
No.
Go ahead, Kim, call the roll, please.
Andrea,
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Marv,
Yes.
Thank you. And then another item of business this evening, couple in a row, a little unusual, but due to the circumstances we're in, and we'll explain. A motion, please, for approval of a pay resolution regarding payment of certain employees during the COVID-19 emergency declaration.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Andrea and seconded by Christina. The board has this resolution as prepared by our attorneys and through Lou. If it's not posted, we'll make sure we get it posted right away. It essentially is a resolution covering the declaration of emergency regarding the COVID-19 virus and the authorization granted under that to the superintendent of schools with regard to work rules, pay, and those types of things with regard to district employees. Does anyone have any further questions on that, or we were?
Mark, everything is posted online.
Okay, thank you very much. So it is all posted for folks. Go ahead, Kim, call the roll on that one, please.
Andrea,
Aye.
Julie,
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Marv.
Yes.
All right, then now I ask for a motion, please, for approval of a second resolution regarding the continuity of essential transportation services.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jolene and seconded by Karen. Another memo, again, provided to us by our attorneys and through Lou. This is, again, recognizing the pandemic and the emergency declarations around COVID-19. This has to do with the district's ability to enter into agreement with our transportation provider for continuation of services as we mutually agree to, essentially to keep our contract in place and keep our drivers in place, our transportation drivers, through at least the current duration, if you will. This will provide for us the ability to be ready to move when we do open schools. It will ensure that all of our drivers that we have driving Brighton buses are still employed and ready to go as soon as we get back to business, if you will, of transporting students. So, and it provides a couple of other provisions that allow Lou and Kevin to work with First Student to make sure that during this period of time, there's a continuation of services, as the memo says. So, go ahead, Kim, call the roll.
Andrea,
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
Julene,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Marv,
Yes.
All right, then. Finally, we're near the finish line. We are going to make it. Motion, please, for approval of our consent agenda for this evening.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Karen and seconded by, was it Andrea or Julene?
I think it was Andrea.
Andrea, thank you. I make note of one item. I will make note of a couple things. For those members of the public who look at the consent agenda, you'll see there's a number of activities there, dated events. We're going ahead right now, going through formal processes. So by the action of the board tonight, we're approving these events in the hopes that things will resume and that the events can take place or be held on a postponed basis. But for now, we have an approval process for fundraising, field trips, things like that. And we move forward with that approval process. We also want to take note, we discussed this a little bit earlier, gifts to the district. We want to take note and a thank you from Dr. Howard Croft to the Visual and Performing Arts Department, a number of photography and business art books. So we thank him for that donation. I'm sorry, Kim, call the roll, please.
Andrea,
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
Julene,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Marv.
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you to the members of the public who were able to join in tonight. We may be doing this again this way on April 14th or before then if we need to meet in a special meeting. Is there any other members of the board, any members of the board who have any other items of business this evening?
Mark, I just want to say one thing before.
Dr. McGowan, go ahead.
Two things. One, with regard to number 9 and 10, the pay resolution and continuity of essential transportation services. I want to thank all of you for your support. Just want to make note again, the concept here for us is to provide income security for the most vulnerable in our school community relative to income, and not as a gift, but rather as a continuity of operations effort and our obligation to our employees as well. And what this does, in several of the contractual agreements in the district, pay would be relatively without question. That's understood as part of their agreements or articulated in the agreements. But for others, that's not necessarily the case. And for that, we needed the board to take official action to allow us to provide that income security going forward. So thank you for your support in that. It's the right thing to do and a necessary thing to do relative to also keeping all employees so that we can return to service quickly. There's a practical necessity to that as well. The other issue is around transportation services. It is the exact same concept that as long as they will continue to be employed by the contractor, our drivers then will be able to come back to service immediately when we're ready to have them drive. The idea of unemployment, if they are not employed by the contractor, if we're not paying on that contract, likely many people would seek other employment, and that's a fragile population already relative to having enough people to drive buses. So I just want to make sure that's very clear to people, the reasons for that. Finally, I want to point out two last things. One is that the presentation that I pulled up for you, so after I stopped and took a breath, could see my text messages were that I had the wrong presentation pulled up. The information is nearly identical, but I want to make sure it's pointed out that Lou's presentation was perfect and without mistake, and that the one presented with errors that will be posted was because we're juggling multiple versions as we're trying to work through this from a distance a little bit differently. That, though, is entirely on me and the wrong version pulled up, different from what I had already gone through earlier in the evening. I will close my additional windows before the next Zoom board meeting. So thanks, Lou, for the accurate information, which is what is being posted online. What the community needs to know is it doesn't change. The tax increase is the same, 3.83%, and the areas for reduction are the same, largely the entire presentation, but where numbers may have differed between slides, that's because that was the pre-edited version. So I want to make sure I'm pointing that out to people. And finally, last but not least, I could not be more proud of the people in our district, top to bottom, relative to the number of people. We have 600 or so employees, and whether they are providing instruction online, whether they are providing food for those who need it, whether they are providing technical help, access to buildings, support from home. I'm looking at this screen, whether it's read alouds. Dr. Hall had to get off for his town hall with T Hall with the senior class. The online opportunities being provided by our principals, by our teachers, by so many staff members, engaging and building community through that. And the patience of everybody here, from all of you as board members to the leadership team members. Many parents are on this, and I think that's great that many of our community members have jumped on this meeting also and taken this in, and I want to thank them for their support. This has been a really interesting, the word interesting covers all manner of things, experience, and our community, watching people in our community support each other has been a beautiful side effect of a bigger picture. So we thank everybody for their support and couldn't be more proud of what's happening and what will continue to happen in the ways that our staff will support the kids and families in our community. So thanks for that. And 3 o'clock tomorrow, a Facebook Live event. I'll do a town hall and happy to have anybody join in. There is a reminder out there with a thought exchange, updated, brand new, wide open. What's going on now that we are 5 days, as of tomorrow, will be 5 days into continuous instruction online, learning opportunities for kids, food service, and the ways that we're trying to support the community. Where are people and what do they need? We'd like to know and like to be able to answer their questions. So take care, everybody. Stay safe and stay very healthy.
Thanks, Kevin. We appreciate that. So just prior to adjourning, on behalf of the Board of Education, our sincere thanks to our leadership team, Kevin, Lou, and Debbie, everyone involved, our directors, our assistants, our principals, all of our folks. You mentioned our teachers. One of the things we want to remind folks is, we talked a little bit about it in the continuation of effort in terms of those 2 resolutions. The vast majority of our people are working. We're not shut down. We just have buildings that are closed. And they're continuing to do more every day. They're continuing to innovate every day to serve children and families. And one of the things we do want to reach out to folks is, you mentioned, Kevin, all of our different groups. I do want to give a shout out to our mental health folks, our social emotional people, the psychologists, the social workers, our counselors, to members of our community. If you need help in your family, reach out. We are here for you. This is going to be a long haul, but we're all in it together. And at the end of the day, we're going to get through it together. So if you know, or a neighbor or a family member who needs some help, let your principal know, let a teacher know, let Kevin know, and we will reach out and put you in touch with the right folks. So thank you to everybody, and thank you for the sustained effort. We do appreciate it. With that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Julene, seconded by Andrea. One last time tonight. Kim, call the roll, please.
Andrea,
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
Julene,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
Harv.
Aye.
Perfect. We are adjourned, folks. Thank you so much to everybody.
This has been a special presentation from the Brighton Central School District Board of Education.